I want to thank Rob and Grant for a rousing bookend to this program. It was exceptional, and we've had really an exceptional kaleidoscope of good thinking and information and perspective for these 2 days. I have the unenviable task of closing it, but I'll do it quickly, I promise you that. And by the way, when we do close, Rob will be out front selling books, so you'll get a chance maybe to talk to him a little bit more. The first thing I want to do is, again, thank everybody who worked so hard to make this a success. The staffs of the Pittsburgh Foundation and the Heinz Endowments, a lot of them have been here working hard. The speakers and panelists have been exceptional, and we're grateful to them. But of course, I want to single out Jeannie Perlman, the Senior Vice President. Jeannie Perlman's genius and crisp, sharp thinking is what really brought this all together. And she's done a great job. I also want to thank the Push 7 team that managed the logistics, very difficult logistics, of 2 days over 2 venues. And I want to thank again our other sponsors, the Buttonwood Fund, the Henry John Simons Foundation, the Knight Foundation, and Media Impact Funders. Now, next, over the next year, we at the Pittsburgh Foundation, in collaboration with the Heinz Endowments and others, will be working with our grantees and the people they serve, working with our donors and our local and national collaborators to ensure that we're continuing to develop programs that help the people in this region understand the First Amendment, engage in talking about it, and assert their First Amendment rights. We expect to work with local artists to create works that celebrate the 5 freedoms of the First Amendment. There are plans for new partnerships with school districts that explore how the First Amendment is taught or not taught in schools to young people. We intend to work with faith communities, cultural organizations, libraries, community centers, everywhere we can. We want to be in the places where people engage in respectful civic dialogue. We think that this ongoing project is the best way for a foundation like ours to bring people with diverse perspectives together for the common good. Clearly, the most important lesson of these 2 days is that we've got to go on with this work. We can't let it drop today. And I promise you that even as threats and attacks against the First Amendment will also go on, we will continue this work. That's a promise. One thing we knew from the very beginning was that one conference, as good as it's been, and it's been just outstanding, wouldn't be enough to cover this very, very broad and complicated issue. So from the beginning, as you may have seen on the website or read in news coverage, we've been planning a second conference on October, I want to make sure I get this right, October 21 and 22, with our co-host for that conference, Duquesne University, and it will be up on the campus at Duquesne. Another partner in that upcoming event will be the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia, who's going to help us with programming. So the very last piece of this 2-day conference comes now when I bring up President Ken Gormley from Duquesne to just give you a few minutes highlighting what will be in that upcoming conference and how we're going to connect the two and keep the programming going. So please join me in welcoming President Ken Gormley. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Max, and it really has been an amazing 2 days as president of Duquesne University, but more importantly, perhaps as someone who has taught constitutional law and First Amendment my entire career. it's an honor to play a role in what has shaped up to be truly one of the most significant initiatives of its kind in the nation, shining a light on the vital importance of the First Amendment in our democratic system of government. As you know, planning for this has gone on for over a year and a half, and we've thanked some of the key people: Jeannie Pearlman, Robert Rosenstein, Joel Simon, Vince Staley, Andy Conti, Grant Oliphant. Literally hundreds of hours have gone into planning the two pieces together. But I do want to say a special word of thanks to the gentleman who was just up here, Max King. He really conceived of this initiative in early 2017. And since the first day he called me, this guy has been like a dog with a giant sock, unwilling to let it go, dragging it forward, making sure it turned into reality. So my thanks to Max for having the vision and the dogged determination, and also to Grant Oliphant, who in one of our early meetings began visualizing this first session and really created the impetus, along with Jeannie Pearlman, to make these special 2 days happen. And what we've seen in this first segment is an illustration in a really powerful fashion what's at stake in the recent threats to the First Amendment, and also what community responses are needed to help steer us back on a safer course here in Pittsburgh and really all over the country and the world. So in October, Duquesne will host the second major event that continues the arc of this series, and it's entitled National Conference on the First Amendment, Bedrock of American Freedoms. And it's meant to be just that, folks. It will provide an opportunity for Americans of all backgrounds and all political persuasions to learn more about the central role of the First Amendment and the role it has played and must continue to play in shoring up our democratic freedoms in the United States. It will cover not just free speech and press, but freedom of religion, association, assembly, the whole gamut. I was struck in yesterday's panel when Robert Rosenthal and Mila Sanina both spoke passionately about the need to have people with different viewpoints in our country have a true dialogue about these topics and find some common ground, some connection points. And I can tell you, I've thought a lot about this. If there's one topic that we in this country should be able to rally around in what has become a tragically divided nation, and to find these connection points, it is the First Amendment. Liberals, conservatives, progressives, moderates, libertarians, I don't care what the political beliefs, Americans of every ideology have a massive stake in celebrating, but also in protecting the fundamental constitutional values embodied in that amendment. So this national conference is aimed at a large national audience. We're going to be looking for television, radio, and digital partners to broadcast it. It will demonstrate, hopefully, that we as Americans have much in common when it comes to this shared foundational value. And we talked about this early on, folks. You know, it was not preordained that it would be in Pittsburgh, and we talked about the fact that Pittsburgh was really the perfect place for this conference because it is the perfect venue from which to reach citizens of all backgrounds and political orientations in this country. It's kind of viewed as neutral territory in some ways, and it will also be an opportunity to showcase this city on a big stage. Some segments will be historical, some will bring to life in new ways current issues and show how the First Amendment can help us navigate through them. I'm proud to announce, really for the first time, I mean, this has been a just moving target, but we have literally a who's who of speakers and panelists. So confirmed speakers at this point now include Marty Barron, the editor of the Washington Post, and Dean Baquet, the editor of the New York Times. Together, they will be talking with David Shribman, the editor of the Post-Gazette, and Max King about the importance of a free, robust press. We have former Governor and Secretary of Homeland Security Tom Ridge and former director of the CIA and NSA, Mike Hayden, talking about the national security, the issue of national security, and how, even as it collides with the First Amendment, that constitutional freedom can and must be protected. University of Chicago President Robert Zimmer, a leading voice on the subject of free speech on university campuses, will continue the great discussion that we heard yesterday on that topic, and we are currently in discussions, it's not a done deal yet, but we are discussing with former Arizona Governor and former Director of Homeland Security Janet Napolitano, now President of the University of California System, to hopefully join President Zimmer in that important discussion. Legendary First Amendment icon Floyd Abrams signed on almost immediately. Professor Alan Dershowitz will appear by Skype. MSNBC television commentator Hugh Hewitt and Fox News commentator Juan Williams will participate in panels, as will the Solicitor General of the United States, Noel Francisco, the nation's leading lawyer in the Supreme Court. And with the assistance of Robert Rosenthal, we're planning a segment on life in countries where First Amendment type protections do not exist. Rosie Rosenthal himself has been held captive in foreign countries. He will be the moderator, but we're also reaching out to a Ukrainian journalist whose husband, also a journalist, was killed in a car bomb, to silence his voice, as long as a woman journalist who was held captive by North Korea during the Clinton administration. We have a segment on technology and new challenges to the First Amendment that will include Richard Gingras of Google News, and we're hoping that Jamil Jaffer from the Knife Foundation, who did such a fabulous job this morning, will be able to make a return trip to Pittsburgh. There will be some appearances by key people who played significant roles in landmark First Amendment cases. These will include Mary Beth Tinker. Any of you who follow any of these cases, that was the landmark Tinker v. Des Moines case upholding the right of school students, and I remember this when I was a kid, to wear black armbands during the Vietnam War protests. And also Simon Tan, leader of the Asian dance rock band The Slants, that challenged the efforts of the Federal Communications Commission to ban the use of that name, took it to the Supreme Court, and last year won a historic victory. We have a few very prominent public officials who will be participating from a distance. These include Governor John Kasich from Ohio, who will appear by video. And just this week, I went to school with her daughter, and so I wore her down, and she agreed to make a short video appearance to support this major event, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. As Max mentioned, the National Constitution Center, led by Jeff Rosen, will be a partner with us, and they will use their own national network to spread word about this conference across the United States. So after the video, the program, folks, with the support of foundation funders, we hope to produce podcasts, videos, white papers, other materials that can be disseminated to the general public in this country and around the globe. I always say I like to think of it as kind of an electronic version of the Federalist Papers. We also hope to work with high schools across the United States, and including to produce a curriculum for a special to celebrate each year going forward, a national celebration of the First Amendment, a National First Amendment Day in years to come. So at a time when incivility and disregard for foundational principles have sadly become the norm in our country, I think we can find common ground in this national celebration of the First Amendment. And as organizers of this series, we believe that all of our freedoms under the Constitution are imperiled, and America's role as a beacon of democracy throughout the world is placed in jeopardy if fundamental First Amendment freedoms are undervalued or undermined. And for that reason, this national conference, this continued dialogue on the First Amendment is more timely and important than ever. So as Max said, the main conference will be on Monday, October 22nd on the Duquesne campus. Because the number of speakers, as you just heard, has grown significantly because of the great interest in this, We're now adding an opening session on the afternoon of Sunday, October 21st, so it's now a day and a half. It's going to be free and open to the public, but there is going to be a lot of demand for seating at this, and we want to make sure we include college students from all over and high school students from all over the region. So we're probably going to make seating available in phases, and we're going to ensure that each of you who signed up for and attended this first session will have one of the earliest opportunities to sign up for the October event online. An email for that will go out. Well, you deserve it. You were here for the first part, and we'll send out an email at some point in the summer, so stay tuned for that. In closing, I just want to say I've spent a lot of time on this in the last year and a half, along with so many folks who made this fabulous program possible here today and yesterday. I believe really strongly that just as Americans, if you looked back in history, have stepped forward to speak up and to educate others with respect to pressing topics during earlier moments of turbulence and uncertainty in American history, and we've had them. A simple example during the period of McCarthyism in the late 50s and 60s, or during the Vietnam War or Watergate. This series of programs that will now continue in October can serve as a catalyst for necessary change, and I believe that with the help of the best minds in the country, we can and will have a major impact that generations later will prove its worth. Thank you for joining us for part one of this series. We'll see you in October.